2 weeks ago, two al-Qaeda gunmen tried to abduct two U.S. Embassy employees in Yemen. The embassy employees shot and killed the gunmen and escaped, but the American embassy in Yemen has been shut down indefinitely since last week because of security concerns involving al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, also known as AQAP. Joining us now to talk more about the Yemen situation and security concerns there, my old colleague, New York Congressman Peter King, a member of the House Intelligence Committee, and at one point in his congressional term, the chairman of the Committee on Homeland Security. Pete, it is great to have you back on America's Forum. What can you tell us about the situation there in Yemen?
Well, J.D., it's always good to be with you. We certainly miss you in Washington, believe me. What's going on in Yemen? Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is the most sophisticated and the most deadly of all the al-Qaeda affiliates. Boko Haram may be more vicious, but the most sophisticated and the most technologically advanced is Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, AQAP. They operate out of Yemen, and they absolutely focus on attacking the United States and attacking American interests. They have scientists, they have extremely skilled and sophisticated operatives, and for several years there, the United States, for whatever reason, slowed down in its attacks on Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. And we saw last summer, for instance, that we had to shut down our embassies in the Middle East primarily because of the threat coming from Yemen, from AQAP. But several months ago, they really rolled the dice, AQAP did, when they put out videos showing massive gatherings of Al-Qaeda operatives in Yemen. And so since then, the U.S. has been systematically attacking them. And now AQAP is responding by these series of car bombings and other attacks. But we can't let up. These are vicious people. They also have a hold here in the U.S. in that they put out the magazine Inspire, internet magazine Inspire, which unfortunately has a significant following in the United States. And they're the ones who basically tell Islamist terrorists in our country how to make bombs, how to carry out attacks. And they also, the intelligence community believes, put subliminal messages, or not even subliminal, but secret messages in Inspire, which can be seen as being signals to operatives here in the U.S.
Well, Congressman King, John Bachman here sitting alongside J.D., and we take a look at a country like Yemen, which in some ways has been more friendly to the United States as we try to combat global terrorism. In fact, welcoming our drone attacks, unlike places like Pakistan as of late, and there's been some trouble with the relationship with Nigeria. But does this just go to show us it doesn't matter how friendly the local government is, no matter how we try to attack these terrorists, whether it's with drones or other techniques, we're simply not finding the answers and the ways to do that?
Yeah, the fact is, the government in Yemen is somewhat supportive of us. In fact, they are supportive. But the government does not control large parts of the country. The Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula is extremely powerful. They're very sophisticated, and they control significant parts of the country. And so even though the government is with us, there is still a strong movement on the ground for AQAP, and the government really has a limited area that it does control. AQAP has significant areas, and also has shown that it's capable of carrying out very significant attacks. Now, they've been hurt. They've been hurt badly. We've scored some real hits against them in recent months. But having said that, they still are very lethal.
Well, let's talk more about that, Peter, and drill down a little bit if we can, because people hear the talk of Yemen and Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and there's this thinking that there's a lack of sophistication, and yet we've seen attacks attributed to AQAP that have been, well, very bold. We remember the underwear bomber, Christmas Day 2009, trying to take down the American airliner. There was a second plot to send mail bombs hidden in toner cartridges on planes headed to the U.S. Even though we've had some impressive strikes against AQAP in the past couple of months, is it fair to say that AQAP is getting more sophisticated as an entity in terms of these near misses?
Yes. In fact, AQAP has always been the most sophisticated, and it's getting even more sophisticated as it goes along. they actually have recruited top scientists to work for them. For instance, they were working on a body bomb, a bomb that could be inserted in the human body and detonated. They have come up with very sophisticated IEDs, and as you mentioned, the underwear bombing, also the cartridge bombing, a bombing attempt. No, they are constantly trying to get ahead of us. Now, we had some successes several years ago when we attacked the head of Al-Qaeda in the actually Shamir Khan, who was their public relations man, and also his brain is going now. Now the number 3 guy, Alaki, who was the number 3 guy in AQAP, probably though the most sophisticated of all of them. He was killed along with Shamir Khan, who actually was a former constituent of mine from Long Island in New York, who was the propaganda minister for AQAP. We scored. Both of them were killed in October of 2011, and that was a big hit. But they were sort of on the ropes for a while, but they've come back in many ways stronger than ever, and we have to really be on our guard against them, and we have to try to stay ahead of them.
And Congressman, I guess the question is, how do we do that? We were just recently showing some video on our screen of Anwar al-Awlaki, the American-born al-Qaeda operative who was killed in Yemen. And that was, as you mentioned, was a big hit to al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula when he was killed because he was an American figurehead of the organization. But still, they have not stopped doing what they're doing there, despite drone attacks, even as recently as last week that hit a large group of al-Qaeda-linked terrorists. So, if the drone attacks are not going to work and we have a friendly government, what can we do? You talked about the need to keep our eye on these guys and protect the homeland, but what can we do?
Well, one thing we shouldn't do is let up. So I think we did have them on the run, and we were pushing back, but we really sort of stepped back our efforts. The Obama administration did, and that gave, I believe, AQAP chance to recoup, chance to get its strength back. Whenever we have them on the run, we have to keep them on the run and keep them on defense and not allow them to come back in any way. We have to stop this talk about, I think it was just a year ago when President Obama says that we were pretty much back in a 9/11 setting. That's not a pre-9/11 setting. Now, it's not true at all. In many ways, al-Qaeda is more lethal and more dangerous than it was on 9/11. Maybe not to carry out the large-scale attack of 9/11 itself, but to carry out very, very serious attacks, and it's going to be harder for us to stop them because on 9/11 there was one entity, Al-Qaeda. Now it's spun off these different franchise operations led by Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula coming out of Yemen, and it is much more difficult for us to keep track of them. They also have they've accelerated their efforts of recruiting people here in the United States over the internet. They have this international communication, which they didn't have back in 2001. So I wish the president would stop this talk about a pre-9/11 situation. He might be in a pre-9/11 mindset, but Al-Qaeda is in a 2014 attack mindset.
And with that in mind, and you touched on it just a second ago, Peter King, that is the notion not so much of Al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, but Al-Qaeda in the USA, inspiring people to join the movement. Even though our president in his campaign said Osama bin Laden is dead and Al-Qaeda is on the run, in the real world in 2014, what do you believe the presence of Al-Qaeda to be now in the United States?
Well, there are definitely individuals in the U.S. who support Al-Qaeda. In New York alone, we've had at least 15 or 16 attempted attacks against New York. We are constantly, and I can tell you the FBI, local police, we saw the Boston Marathon last year, the attack up there. There are elements in the U.S. who are inspired by what Al-Qaeda is doing overseas, particularly AQAP. They're on the internet, and there's others we've seen over the years. There have been agents sent here to the United States. We had Shamir Khan, who attempted, we had Zazi, who was an attempted subway bomber in New York. We had Shahzad, who was an American citizen who was actually trained in Afghanistan to come back here and carry out an attack on Times Square. So we constantly have to be monitoring these. There's any number of attacks we've been able to stop, and we can't let our guard down. That's the important thing, and that's where the president hurts when he tries to act as if this is all in the rearview mirror.
Peter, that's
Not.
something
They're
we need.
in front of us.
We
In
need
front of
to
us, and it's all around us.
We need to talk more about this. I know you have a busy schedule, Pete King, but if you could agree to stay with us through the break, because we need to talk more about the policies and procedures within the current administration, their current outlook in terms of what is going on in the war against terror. And John, to hear Pete talk about the situation where it seems that many in the administration, to paraphrase what our friend Pete King is saying, have a 9/10 mentality the day before the attacks of so many years ago rather than a 9/11 mentality. It's something of grave concern. We'll have more with Peter King coming up. We always invite your comments, and there are 3 notable ways to do that via social media.
Certainly are. You can reach us on Twitter at NewsmaxTV, hashtag America's Forum. The email address, we love to get those in, connect at newsmaxtv.com, and find us on Facebook, facebook.com/NewsmaxTV.